John Lahart.
Corla. And so, look, I want to applaud the Minister because he has run with this since his appointment, and I think it's fair to say has advanced it more rapidly than any of his predecessors. I do have an issue with the Citizens' Convention. It's not a Citizens' Assembly. You know, this is the Citizens' Assembly. It is the Citizens' Convention. And look, I know why it's been put into the Citizens' Assembly is that they will make the decisions that this House lacks the courage to do, because they will come back with the same kind of ideas about a directly elected mayor for Dublin that I think the more radical among us have been proposing for a number of years. And that's a shame. I think we should grasp it and we should embrace it. Dublin needs, Dublin Chamber has been making this point for a number of years. When you look at the number of agencies someone coming into this country has to engage with, you go to other cities that have directly elected mayors with powers and with budgets, there's a one-stop shop, there's a go-to person that everybody in the city or county knows, well, look, ultimately the buck stops with this person. They have responsibility, but with that responsibility comes accountability. And I disagree with Deputy Eamon Ryan on this point. I would start off with a very restricted number of responsibilities, just as London did. And even if we started in Dublin giving a directly elected mayor the responsibility for transport and making that person the one-stop shop for transport, the number of agencies, if you want to engage, even as an opposition spokesperson on Dublin, around transport, you have the Chamber has a voice in business, you have the Transport Infrastructure Ireland, you have the NTA, you have Dublin Bus, and they're just a small few. You have the cyclists body. You have to go round and talk to all of them to get their different views. The power of a mayor to call all of those in and to actually make decisions. Dublin, Minister, and I know you get this because we've spoken about it, is different. Dublin isn't competing with, and this really has to be stressed, Dublin isn't competing with other cities in Ireland. It's competing as an international city with other cities in Europe that already have directly elected mayors. And if you look at we'll say the great covenant of mayors around climate change and things like that, to these meetings you have the mayors of Munich, mayors of Barcelona, Madrid, Paris, with their great powers, great authority, and in Dublin you have 4 indirectly elected mayors with no say in terms of the direction of policy back home, signing up to conventions, but we have no real power or influence in it. And again, a directly elected mayor affords a capital the opportunity to develop partnerships with other cities with whom we have common interests and common policy interests. And in a post-UK membership of the UK scenario, that is going to become critical to actually develop new allies. And new allies don't always have to be national. They can actually be city-based, where we find common ground and common cause with cities and we're able to fight our corner knowing that we have allies who are fighting the same issues. So the restriction of powers is one thing that we can do. In Westminster, they restricted the powers of mayor and actually increased the powers every couple of years as they saw the mayoralty, directly elected mayoralty, was beginning to bed in. So when you don't have, as in Dublin, where the city is grinding to a halt and has been grinding to a halt, where we have congestion costing 300 million a year and estimated to cost this capital about 3 billion a year by the time we get to 2030, we need someone who's accountable and responsible, and certainly the present Minister exercises no great responsibility or interest in traffic congestion and transport issues concerning everyday Dubliners, and certainly shuns any kind of accountability in relation to the same. As Dublin spokesperson, when you engage with the 4 Dublin local authorities, you realise they have 4 directors of planning, 4 directors of transport, 4 directors of arts and culture, 4 directors of environment. Rarely do they actually communicate with each other. Now, I'm the first to champion, Minister, the fact that the establishment of those 4 Dublin local authorities was a response to corruption in the planning system, whereby you had potentially elected representatives who might live 60 miles away in one part of a county voting to zone land 50 miles away. The 4 Dublin local authorities became very manageable and absolutely ruled that kind of possibility out. The other success of them was that we actually have established 4 successful county towns, 3 successful county towns in Dundrum, Swords and in Tallaght in my own constituency. But and I raise this at the Climate Change Committee, and I'll finish on this, Count Corla. There's a roundabout in my constituency has been constructed recently. Small. This is a small thing in the great scheme of things. Someone asked me recently, I suppose you're up to your tonsils dealing with Brexit. And I said, no, the biggest issue I'm facing at the moment is a roundabout in my constituency, because no one is accountable. It is causing chaos and havoc. And no public representative can actually pinpoint the person who's responsible or accountable for it. So do you know what's happening? There's public meetings, there's a meeting tonight I'm going to after this, and there's a protest on Saturday. And it's only through protest, it seems, in this town that officialdom actually begins to hear, begins to listen and begins to take action. If you had a directly elected mayor, the people in my constituency would know that's the person we go to, they're responsible, we hold them accountable for this, and they have to rectify the situation. Thanks, Tommy.